Esteemed panelists have joined us online, so I think we can start the session. Before we begin, I just want to check again if all of them can hear us. Mishra sir, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you so much. Dr. Murali? Dr. Murali, can you hear us? Professor Narayanan?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Murali, I'll try once again. I think we can see you, but you're not audible. Can you please connect to Dr. Murali? Seems he's not yet. All right. Okay. So I think close on the heels of that very enlightening and wonderful session, we now come to the plenary session, which is titled Online Talks on Hill Systems. I am Isa Wanda. I am your moderator for this session. I'm Secretary to the Government of Meghalaya, Department of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. I'm joined by Sir S.C. Sadhu on the stage, who is Secretary, Community and Rural Development Department. So the discussion about water as a critical resource and the need for its holistic and sustainable management takes on a whole new dimension when it is done in the context of hill ecosystems. Water systems in hill areas are not only more complex, but there is increased vulnerability to such systems over a period of time, especially in light of climate change. Livelihoods of people in rural communities depend largely on natural resources, so there is a pressing need for delicate balance between the two. We are aware in the Northeast, in our own state, increasing populations and expanding habitations require greater water availability. How can we do that while keeping our natural resources intact? And lastly, what is the role of government, of institutions, and of local communities when it comes to developing a consensus on sustainable and equitable water usage, taking into account tribal communities like Meghalaya as well, where there is a close and inextricable relationship between communities and the natural environment. So, this session will bring in some of these very, very important perspectives on water and hill systems across various themes by way of reflections given by some prominent experts nationally and internationally who will be joining us. Our panelists have a broad range of experience and expertise, and we look forward to their interventions. I will introduce them right now and give the detailed introduction before each panelist, after which I will request each panelist to take up 10 to 15 minutes of time. I think, in the interest of time, we will request all the panelists to complete their respective presentations, and then we will open the house for questions or discussions, if any. I begin with Sir R.M. Mishra, retired IAS, who is presently Executive Chairman of the Meghalaya State Investment Promotion Board. Welcome, sir. It is nice to see you. Sir is an officer of the Assam Meghalaya cadre. He retired as Additional Secretary to the Government of India, and he has served in various capacities both in the Government of India and the Government of Meghalaya. His experience over 30 years in the government has spanned various sectors, amongst them being mines and minerals, environment and forests, MSME, water resources, and others. Notably, in the context of Meghalaya, it was during Sir's time that the Meghalaya Basin Development Agency was instituted, MBDA in short, of which he was CEO for a very long time. MBDA has grown and evolved since then to become one of the critical government institutions in the state working on multi-sectoral livelihood interventions, market access, as well as sustainable management of natural resources, including land, water, and forests. We welcome you, sir. Sir will be talking about sustainable water systems in the particular context of hill regions. Sir, I invite you to give your talk at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Isa, for your kind words. And it's like we talking about the hills, as you very rightly said. Uh, Hills have this water complexity where natural water systems and natural ecosystems. There is a very kind of intricate play, interdependencies, and the balance has to be maintained there. So there is a diagram, I think is not very visible, but it will be available for reference. So you can see the trees, their roots, their foliage, then the weather conditions, then the moisture in the air, the clouds. Everything has some interplay which impacts the availability of water, the quality of water. Climate change, as she has said very rightly, is a very important factor and it particularly impacts the hills. Next. When we talk about water management in hilly regions, challenges are topographical, infrastructural, climate, and then seasonality of water. Like say, a place like Meghalaya, several other places on the planet, there's so much of plenty of water in the rainy season, but we have very little, very scarce kind of position in that extreme winter. So this also is a challenge to be managed next. Then those other challenges which are there across the water spectrum, say biodiversity and environmental concerns, which have been caused by deforestation, socio-economic and cultural factors, which have been particularly highlighted by indigenous practices, involvement of people. I remember when I was in the state, I visited one of those drip irrigation projects in one of the areas of Meghalaya. Bamboo-based drip irrigation. Now, this plastic-based drip irrigation has come now, but the age-old practice of bamboo-based drip irrigation. So that is the ingenuity of people. Many times in our enthusiasm to bring new technology, we lose sight of these practices, where we could have gained a lot from these practices had we just updated them, integrated them with the modern context, and benefited from them. Coming to the policy and systems, I'll cover this little later. The sum and substance is that addressing all these challenges requires a very holistic approach to managing water systems. This is particularly important for hills. Now, when we say holistic, this also opens up a very, very great kind of opportunity for enhanced value proposition. Because when you manage water in a holistic way, that means you take care of natural ecosystems, forestry, then you also take care of, say, multiple use of water. Same water, particularly in hills, it flows in the cascades. So same water can be used for aquaculture, same water can be used for microhydro, same water can be used for irrigation, same water can be used for drinking water. It can be apportioned in such a way. And many times is, as she was mentioning, the equitable use of water. Because if we are not able to ensure effective governance of these water systems, maybe the upper riparians then they'll catch up with everything and swallow it, and then there'll be nothing left for the people who are underneath. Similarly, in fact, in my travels in the countryside, I notice sometimes people in the upper catchment areas they are using a lot of soap for those washing clothes and then so forth. So it destroys virtually that water for portability down the line. And therefore there's these relationships which are amongst these community groups. Earlier on, when systems were very localized and then the water use was very limited, it was not that much of a challenge. But now, since the need for water has gone up manifold, then this is particularly important that we set up those effective governance systems, which are also participatory, to take care of all these things. Next. Another dimension of governance is our capacity to understand water. Now, water, as we know, is very powerful, and we have seen its fury in some of these hill areas of Uttarakhand, where the entire town was washed away. Actually, so water is powerful. It has its fury is very powerful. Its value is powerful. So water is very very important, and therefore to understand the nature of water available, how much of water is available, what is the kind of quantum of water available, what is the quality of that water, how it is changing over time. All these dimensions are very important, and then Since we have this many time challenge of silo based kind of approach, which is a very difficult thing to interface, and therefore the groundwater somebody is managing, then the surface water is somebody is managing, then the forest somebody else is managing. So that's why as she was mentioning, we in Meghalaya we piloted an experiment where we said let this be institutionalized in such a way that all these critical players are under one roof, under one umbrella. And the institutional structure was such that it was headed by the chief secretary of the state, and the district collectors were the executive directors. Now, this has been very beneficial, as she was mentioning, and this can be kind of used as a learning in other hill contexts, I would like to say. So, the resource mapping, actually, the entire knowledge of water, that's a very important factor, particularly in hills. And this applies very much to the aquifers understanding. Like, say, for example, Shillong, the Milam block. Polo area might have a lot of water because it's a riverine context. But the upper higher hill regions, they may have less water. But when we classify that block as a kind of groundwater availability block, we declare it as a total block is overexploited. So what happens is then we may deny people access to that groundwater in some areas where it is there in abundance, whereas people may be just taking it out where it is not that much there. And therefore, it's very important that this knowledge of water, integrated knowledge of water, becomes more robust, and that requires kind of resource mapping, quantity mapping, quality mapping, users mapping, and so forth. Next. So here I would like to also mention these hilly areas. Some very powerful experiments have been conducted, and rainwater harvesting is one one very there is some resounding resounding sound. Can you check? This is there is some problem with the sound system. This.
There's some echo, I think. Can you please fix that at the back? So we can see the
Yes,
slide. Yes, we can
yes,
see
yes.
the image.
Yeah, yes. Yes, sorry.
So please carry on.
Okay. So this one is catch the drop wherever it falls through the rainwater harvesting. Some very important experiments have already been conducted there. Another area which is having a lot of potentials as a water technology is grey water treatment, and very successful experiments have been conducted in terms of grey water solutions. And another powerful technology which is available to us is moisture to water. And this moisture to water is a technology which can be used in a lot of hill areas. Next slide. Moisture to water is a very powerful technology. It can be used, like say, Meghalaya, I could notice that there is an area called Mornington. A lot of moisture, a lot of kind of fog throughout the year, and then surface water and groundwater possibilities are very little. So therefore, this conversion of this moisture to water is a very powerful possibility. Next. Then in some areas, these people have tried this solar powered water ATMs and kiosks. And next. Then these community based tanks, like I visited Singapore, I saw there, very successful model. And next. And some of these things I've already listed here. You can just have a look. Zevo farming, then there's micro reservoirs and check dams, terracing, contour planning, rejuvenating of springs. Meghalaya, there's been a lot of good work, and also Sikkim, Nepal, so many other places, and promote this water efficient agriculture practices. Next. Community collaboration, as she was mentioning, Isa was very rightly mentioning. Meghalaya, there's been a lot of success, like encourage partnerships between village darbars in Shillong and those in the catchment area. Several successful experiments have been conducted. Next. And similarly, in water technology area, also there are partnerships which are possible. Next. And moving on, in fact, it's important that we, as we said, that ecosystem management is important. We need to take care of health, hygiene, and sanitation. Social and cultural activities have to be integrated in the modern context. Like earlier in Indian culture, if you see, we had this system of worshipping rivers and tanks and water bodies. That was important to respect water. Then education about livelihoods and local water governance. Next. So this is where it's important that we explore partnerships. Only government cannot do everything, and therefore the private sector, the public-private partnerships, and other models globally they've been tried in several countries. Performance-based contracts, and then wastewater treatment plants, and so forth. Now, just to recapitulate, there are few points I would like to just highlight. One is understanding water is very important. And until unless we understand water in totality, it will be very difficult to manage it holistically. It's very difficult to manage it sustainably. Then, as I said, holistic approach to water is very important, and that also paves the way for multi-purpose use of water when the approach is holistic. That's important. In hills, the decentralized water solutions are important because the sources are diverse, and therefore the centralized kind of approach is not likely to be very effective. So decentralized approaches are important. So that springs and the other water sources can be leveraged very successfully. Cultural practices are important. Then the democracy of water is very important. What do I mean by democracy of water is water of the people, by themselves and for themselves. Because in certain countries, I have seen there is a tendency of the governments to take over the entire kind of work relating to water management, sustainability, supply, and everything. Now, clearly, it is not sustainable because there are limits to which government can invest and then take care of it. And many times we create entitlements without taking care of the commensurate responsibilities being devolved. So this mismatch, this asymmetry is very, very counterproductive for sustainability of water sources and water management systems. And like say we have this piped water system. So everybody is now looking forward to water coming from the pipe, but do we have that much of water? And who is going to augment those sources actually? So this partnership of the people in this entire process is important. One more thing is change. Like as Darwin says, there's nothing more powerful than change. And therefore, nothing is static. Therefore, the investment paradigm which we build has to be designed in such a way that it factors in incremental investments for change to be managed. Many times we are stuck with those old 40-year-old structures and 50-year-old structures, and we have not provided for this change in the context. And the last thing is our investment grid. Our investment grid has to be such that it is holistic and integrated. It caters to the needs of natural ecosystems being preserved and sustained and made more robust. And it takes care of seven things: knowledge, which includes research, innovation, dissemination, etc. Second is finance. Third is technology. Fourth is infrastructure and logistics. Then related thing is the entire aspect of market of water and governance, which couples with people's participation. So these seven things, if they're catered to by way of investment. So generally we say no, lay these pipes, make this infrastructure, but these many other factors are ignored, and therefore it poses a challenge to sustainability. Yes, I think you've given only that much of time, so I would like to conclude here. If there are any questions, we can pick them up later. And sorry for the disturbance and noise which crept in between. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Given the short time, I think that has been a very enlightening and exhaustive talk, sir has made several entry points into the whole topic of water, right from understanding it in totality, a holistic approach to water management, involvement of communities, integrating traditional knowledge with sustainable and technologically updated practices, and also the democracy of water, something very interesting, which I hope we'll have a little more time later to talk about. Sir, we will have questions at the end after the other panelists speak. So thank you so much. I now take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Murali Tumarakudi. I hope he is joined us. Dr. Murali, are you here?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. Dr. Murali is director of the G20 Global Land Initiative Coordination Office of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. Prior to the UNCCD, Dr. Murali was the chief of the Disaster Risk Reduction Program in the UN Environment Program. He is an internationally renowned expert in disaster response and crisis management, and has been involved in several post disaster responses and follow ups in a number of major crises and disasters of our time. He will offer a very, very important perspective on water management from the context of climate change, and will talk about water, hill lives, and future. Over to you, Dr. Murali.
Thank you for the very generous introduction. I also want to thank my good friend Shakil for inviting me to this session. I must say that I haven't had the pleasure of visiting Meghalaya. So when I received this invitation, I spent some time trying to understand about the context of both Meghalaya and water sources, as well as uh, this conference itself. And I was really amazed by the breadth and depth of topics which is being discussed. And I must congratulate the organizing team for their efforts. Back home in Kerala, where I am originally from, I have the reputation of forecasting disasters. And this is probably why I was asked to talk about the future in addition to climate change and water. I must say that I'm not as conversant with the landscape and context of Meghalaya, but I will certainly try to talk about what is in store broadly for hilly areas in the context of a changing climate. Unfortunately, we are talking on this topic exactly as more than 100 people are buried under land slide in Philippines. And this is something which is we consistently come across in the United Nations these days. You have hilly areas, you have a changing climate, and one of the clear manifestations of a changing climate is that even when the total amount of rainfall is not decreasing, the rain falls in a much shorter interval than before. And this causes two problems. So for example, a place like Meghalaya, which probably receive more than 3,000 millimeters of rain, the number of rainy days would come down. The rain falls with higher intensity. And the gap between days which rains and day where there's no rain increases. So therefore, on one side, you have issues like flash floods, you have landslides, and on the other side, you have water scarcity and drought, which is quite ironic for a place which has tremendous amount of rain. And this is exactly the same in Kerala, so exactly the same in Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Nepal, and so on and so forth. Across the world, increased rainfall intensity, increased drought in hilly areas, something which is doubly tragic. Now, people often ask me, do we now have more disasters happening than before? Or is it just that we know more about disasters because the world is better connected? And therefore, there is more reporting. And if something happens in a remote corner in Chile or Brazil, we still come to know, which is not the case 20, 30 years back. There's certainly an element of that. But in the United Nations, where we handle hundreds of disasters per year, there's a clear pattern emerging. more than 80% of all disasters these days is relating to hydrometeorological issues. So it is either a cyclone or a drought or a heavy rain, increased temperature, decreased temperature, and so on, which are all manifestations of climate change. It is not that climate change is producing new disasters. Climate change acts as a magnifying lens over existing disaster patterns. So if you had rainfall, it produced more rainfall. It had storms, it produced higher wind of storms. So cyclones, stronger cyclones, more cyclones, and so on and so forth. So climate change has to be seen as a magnifying glass. So what we see across the world is a pattern where the number of disasters are increasing in numbers as well as intensity. Now, onto this increased hazards, you add the consequence of increased human population as well as increased activities of human populations. When you have more and more people living anywhere, including the hills, naturally they would need more space, more land has to be cleared, more roads has to be built, more common infrastructure is being built. And all this interfacing with increased rainfall will lead to increased disasters, including landslides. Now, it is not just disasters which are caused by water resources crisis. You also cause conflicts. The previous speaker mentioned about the challenges between those who live in the upper riparian area and the lower riparian area. This is true whether we are talking about communities, states within country, or between two countries, or between multiple countries. Wherever there is a situation where there's a river flowing upstream to downstream, and everyone needs water, and there is no agreed way of sharing of that water between the upper and lower regimes, clearly that will lead into conflicts. In fact, many people these days say that water could be cause of one of the future conflicts. But the fact is that what has been a cause of conflict, the earliest human agreements between communities were all related to water. The earliest global agreements, which is almost 5,000 years old, like in the international conventions, they were relating to sharing of water. So the crisis of water resources not only cause more disasters, but it also can cause conflicts. It can also cause migration. When young people are growing up in areas with water stress, and the areas where water stress is increasing is on the rise globally. So young people are leaving those situations and they're migrating to cities, which cause, of course, unplanned urbanization, which cause further struggle, including water resource crisis in the cities, but it also causes rural-urban type of conflict. And some people leave their state, which create one set of an internal migration crisis, and some people leave country from one country to another, which cause interstate conflict. So water resource crisis, augmented by climate change, lead both to natural disasters and climate change. And this, as we are still not in a position where we can claim that we are in control of climate change, this is something which is getting increasingly problematic. I was reading yesterday, I think in BBC, that the past 12 months, once again, were the hottest 12 months on record. And this is happening year after year after year. I also read that the annual budget of carbon emission, which if we were to meet the 1.5 degree commitment, is already being exhausted in February. Imagine, it's like a family which spent all its income in the first 2 months of the year. So we are in this trajectory where the climate change is increasing and we are really not in control despite the numerous international agreements. It is leading to crisis. It is leading to conflict. And what can we do about this challenge? And the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, we are heavily seized of this problem. And the convention, which is probably not as well known as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, as well as the Convention on Biological Diversity, actually was formed together with them. So between these three conventions, we are called the Rio Conventions, the UNCCD, the CBD, and the UNFCCC. And one of our core work is on desertification. And of course, water management come into the heart of it. All of you are now familiar with the G20 process because last year India hosted the absolutely spectacular G20 events for the first time. In 2020, when Saudi Arabia hosted the G20 events in Riyadh, which was a virtual event, they decided that land degradation caused by desertification and other causes, including soil erosion, is a matter which global humanity should be considering more and more. And they established the Global Initiative for Land Restoration, and which is the office which I'm currently heading. Now, there is a tremendous interface between land degradation as well as water resources. So if you look at the latest water land degradation atlas of India, prepared by the Space Application Center of the Indian Space Research Organization, you will see the top, India has close to 97 million hectares of degraded land. And one of the top causes of land degradation is water erosion. And clearly, this is an area in the hilly areas where you have steep slopes. If you have the change in the land cover, suddenly it causes land, soil erosion, and land degradation. So, added to the landslide type of issue, you add the slow emerging crisis of land degradation. So, working with the G20 members, including India, we are trying to reverse that situation. Of the 97.5 million hectares of land which India has under degraded land category, Government of India is committed to restore 26 million hectares of that by 2030. And the government is using the entire range of programs from the Green India Mission to Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme to achieve the 26 million hectares. And globally, what we are doing is to promote land restoration efforts globally. And we do that by multiple tools. Number one, we share global best practices. And this is clearly where topics like this and meetings like this is of immense interest to us. Because I was reading about Meghalaya and I was also listening. There are a number of community best practices of water management, which clearly will benefit the way the land is governed, which will clearly benefit the way the communities are able to seek their livelihood. So where are those best practices from the community? How do we harness them? How do we share among not only the communities in Meghalaya, not in Northeast, not in India, but globally? Because the challenges Meghalaya is facing is not unique. It is happening across the world, and therefore the best practices need to be shared. But there are best practices in other parts of the world. There could be best practice in Liberia or in Chile, which could be of application to India, and clearly we should bring it back to India as well. The second element which we are working on is on capacity building. If we have to improve water management or land management or any topic for that reason, we must create an entire cadre of people who understand the topic. Conventionally, we try to do this by training small groups of people, 30, 40, 50, 100 at a time. But that is not sustainable. If we need to ensure that these concerns of humanity, be it climate change, be it desertification, be it soil pollution, be it water pollution, be it water scarcity, is understood by an entire generation, then this topic has to penetrate into the academic curriculum, right from the school days all the way into the university curriculum. So what we are doing is to work with the global universities, be it on forestry, be it on urban planning, be it on agriculture, be it on mining, and to ensure that issues relating to water resources, issues related to land degradation, issues related to reforestation, issues related to land restoration, they are all integrated into the curriculum so that you have an entire generation of young people who are familiar with the topic. The final approach which we take is to convince young people that when you have an area which has a challenge, be it a challenge relating to water, be it a challenge relating to land, you also can see it as an opportunity. And there are hundreds of young people who are turning challenges into opportunities. For example, there are many cities in the world where urban waste management is a crisis. And all of us complain about it. But across the world, there are young people who take management of waste in urban areas as a business opportunity. And then they make a business out of it. They provide employment to hundreds of other people. I was in Ivory Coast a few years back. And there was one lady who used to be a rag picker who developed an entire business and has become a multi-millionaire using waste management as a platform. What we are now trying to work with young people around the world, instead of migrating to urban areas and to have a reduced cultural quality of life, you see the challenges in your area as a land of opportunity. But we are not just asking people in rural areas to stay in rural areas and deal with their challenge. We are also asking people in urban areas. We are asking people in the universities. We are asking people in the elite institutions to see the challenges which we face as opportunities for startup. So you not only work on artificial intelligence or robot Internet of Things, but you also work on issues such as water resources, climate change, or land management. But you could also do both. You could think, how can we use artificial intelligence as a way of predicting the future of rain or drought or landslide, thereby providing a service to the people in the rural areas or in the hilly areas. So not only you work on the highest level of technology, but you also benefit people on the ground. So how can we convert the challenges we face into opportunities? We call it the land of opportunities. And we inculcate not only the technical knowledge how to handle it, but also the business knowledge of how to convert that into a startup platform. And this is an area which, again, we are working with. I would conclude by saying that as much as we have challenges of climate change, of water sources, we also have solutions. New technologies emerging, such as artificial intelligence, based modeling, is able to predict crises much before they emerge. And there is this huge young population who are fully connected with technology, who are trained in modern science, engineering, and research, who can bring more and better solutions to our traditional problems. So work with our young people to ensure that we have a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Murali. I think that was a tremendously timely talk for us, alarming in many ways, by way of your reminder that although the oldest conflicts have always been linked to water, that has continued. And in fact, I think it's often said that the next wars or the next major conflict of our times will be related to water. Sir has stressed also on the paradox, which is not only peculiar to us, but it is universal. In Meghalaya, we have the highest rainfall in the world, but due to high surface runoff, we also experience acute drought, scarcity of water for various purposes. But thank you, sir, for talking about so many things, and most importantly, giving us a snapshot of the kind of work that is being done globally as well to address some of these issues, and also the stressing on the need to build the capacity, and especially to mobilize young communities and the newer generation to go back and try and come up with sustainable solutions for this pressing issue. Thank you. We will come back to you for questions in a short while. I will now introduce our third speaker, who is Professor N.C. Narayanan. Professor Narayanan is presently head of the Ashank Desai Center for Policy Studies in IIT Bombay. Professor Narayanan works on water, sanitation, and climate studies with a focus on the policy and governance aspects. At IIT Bombay, the center that he heads currently offers master's and PhD programs in public policy, and his work spans issues of local governance, of technology, and institutional choices in urban sanitation, drinking water reforms and governance, water conflicts, uncertainties in climate change, development theory, etc. And he will present to us right now on the topic Living Labs, People, Policy, and Nature Collaboration. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you. And thank you for this invitation for this, kind of wonderfully organized conclave. And thank you for my previous speakers who actually kind of touched upon many of the things that I wanted to introduce also. I'll say it on the way. Um, I'm going to talk about an experience that we have, in the last 6 years of immersive learning and local action for water and sanitation, and which actually evolved into a living lab, where we constantly learn. It's called iterative learning. That is what the living lab is. And I'm going to talk about water body pollution. That's the entry point where liquid and solid waste, management becomes very important. And especially in both, we say that there are some dominant conventional treatment solutions which have limitations. And then we have evolved a strategy for town level planning with what we call as the student citizens who will actually learn on the way. And then we will come to this small town in Kerala where we are doing our experiments, and which will actually kind of, we'll talk about the scope of a living lab approach, which Dr. Shakil actually has visited us, and that's why this idea came up where when in this conclave we should present. So this is an image very near where you all of you are sitting. It's the Omium Lake, but from internet. So apologies if this is wrong. And this is my entry point that most of the urban water bodies are polluted. And then actually from 1850s we have this solution of centralized treatment plants, which are which needs sewage to be the sewerage network to be kind of connected throughout the town, and then which has to reach this treatment plant maybe at the periphery of our towns, which is actually critiqued as high in capital investments, high in running costs, except especially energy and chemicals, which is actually a problem in the context of a climate changing world, maintenance costs, and then it needs much water to kind of push this wastewater. So water demand for transportation. And most importantly for this conclave, it is not very, useful for hilly towns and coastal towns, which have, and then, low population density areas also. And major another problem is that it brings in a disparity in sanitation. Like even in big towns where you can see here, that our high growth centers, high density of population, which have actually kind of availability of this kind of infrastructure, because our million plus cities, or more than 60% of the households are connected. uh, but you come down to our, more numerous, 85% of the cities, only less than 15% of the people are connected. This also throws up an opportunity, like like we can, if we move on to more sustainable solutions, we can leapfrog to sustainability also. So India has a lot of opportunity also in getting into small scale sewage treatment plants, which are low capital and O&M costs, distributed costs, less burden for the public exchequer. Then the state can decide, where to kind of put in the money, which can then move on to more marginal populations, making people responsible for their own pollution also, both liquid and solid waste. Can we ensure treatment at the source itself for both, and then only the rest of it we'll be doing it at the community level, or lastly at the town level. I think, so can we inverse this kind of logic? Then utilization of treated sewage for local needs like irrigation, which will actually replace the demand for fresh water also. So I'm not going into the technologies. There are numerous technologies which are kind of nature-based solutions. But the problem is that, when you have a centralized treatment plant and a sewerage system, it can be centrally planned. It mostly worked on thumb rule, like 80% of the water that we distribute becomes wastewater, and then you need to kind of have the treatment system and the sewerage. But here, we may need, other kinds of details also. We may need the quantity, quality, and, flow of wastewater, discharge points. Then we need to understand the household level systems. What are the practices? What is the infrastructure? What is the socioeconomic profile of the population? And then actually we have developed some mobile apps like OSM Tracker and ODK Collect, where you can collect this data very very easily, and then it can be visually presented in GIS platforms also. So the output is a methodology for participatory analysis at town level. So the question that we asked is, can local academic institutions be knowledge providers? Because unlike the big projects, we won't get, kind of national level consultants to plan small towns. So what we started with is the concept of wastewater sheds, where, as in Shillong, where our towns are in different watersheds if it's a hilly region, and naturally water flows down. And then the question is, can we plot drains also there so that the flow of water is understood? And if you understand the other characteristics like the socioeconomic profile, habitations, a town is always very different. Like there are, sparsely populated, periphery regions. There are commercial core. There is this government establishments. There are recreation areas. So a town can be differentially seen, and can there be different ways of understanding a town? This is our map of the Alibag town, where we have understood it as seven different zones. The extremes being the low income residents of Koli fishermen, and who doesn't have even toilets, and the intervention should be more construction of public toilets, to apartments dominated by middle and upper income households whose problem is, they need, better, septic tanks, and better connecting kind of systems. So this is the way to kind of see a town as a more disaggregated entity, as Mr. R. Mishra was telling. I think, can we have a decentralized ways of looking at it? But the problem is that, we didn't have a methodology. So our contribution is kind of trying to develop a methodology for this. And after this, we came to Alapi in Kerala. which have a network of canals. And when we came, I think, this was the situation. It is a very successful solid waste management at that time. 2012 it started. When we reached in 2017, it was a kind of relatively successful, at least in the core areas of decentralized solid waste management, thanks to the MLA at the time, Dr. Thomas Isaac. But this is the kind of canals that we saw, even refrigerators in the canals. And so what we started was we started with 36 students developing a methodology, as I told earlier. Then we scaled it up in 2018 May by 330 students who came from many IITs, NITs, and there were many experts, including Mr. Murali, who spoke before me. And and then there was a kind of participatory exercises where in another next winter school we actually brought in urban design and planning students who actually planned for two subcanals, what could be done. So this where they did civil survey, they did household survey, water quality analysis, and then we actually divided the town into different zones. And then we found that there is one zone which is actually the most marginalized, which is the earlier manual scavengers, the current municipal workers colony. And we actually did an intervention there, which is a 3-minute video I will play. Hope the audio is okay.
We don't have any audio yet. Can you please check?
Is it coming now?
I think there's a bit of a lag, sir, but we can see the video but not the audio.
Not the audio.
Most residents of
It's
Chartanad
come now.
colony
It's come.
were once manual
You can hear.
scavengers. The extreme pollution, including human excreta, had made healthy living almost impossible. It is to find a practical solution to this problem that IIT Bombay and Kila came together and began an experiment known as Canalpi. The first thing that Canalpi workers did was conduct extensive surveys in the region. Katanada Canal, its tributaries, and nearby houses became a designated micro water system. They studied the socio-economic situation of these houses. They evaluated the existing waste management systems in place. And as part of the survey, all the canals leading to the colony were clearly mapped. Based on this, a clear course of action was formulated. Considering that there might not be enough space to build septic tanks for each individual house, it was decided that sewage will be treated in a public system and then put back into the canal. Thirdly, it was necessary to build an aerobic composting unit for other kinds of organic waste. To this end, Kerala Metals and Minerals Limited pledged their CSR funds. Sewage from households are transported to a system via pipes. The first stage of treatment is done with the help of anaerobic baffle reactors. The water moves into an artificial wetland filled with canna plants, after which the water flows into the canal. One big advantage of the system is that it requires very little maintenance. Only a single electric pump is required. Everything else works with the help of gravity. Not only that, no chemicals or machines are used to treat the water. This movement received a lot of cultural support that is seldom seen in such endeavors. Through voluntary public help, the canal was brought back to life in just one day. The old public toilet was turned into a library. Alapura's local art collective, Harmony, made the entire area gorgeous with their paintings. This waste management project began drawing in tourists from all over. Two members of the colony became full time workers in this project. This project became a source of pride for the people who lived there. This is the beautiful story of how such settlements, dismissively called slums, ceased to be without the help of bulldozers.
So that was the experience, and this is the kind of individual toilets that we made, and this is the old public toilet which was turned into a library for the students. And during the COVID times, they were given television also for making it a classroom. And then we had I quickly go through the solid waste campaign also, which was already there, there for the organic waste, the biobins and biogas plants, and for the yeah, and then for the and there is community composting also. Plus, for the inorganic, plastic is collected, and they're kind of segregated and distributed. So we did a series of studies to understand the gap assessment surveys, the particular technology problems with aerobic composting units, and then a study of Harita Karma Sena, the self-help group of women who were actually collecting this, and how to kind of improve them. And from 30, now they have become 130 in Alapi. And then there was a study on waste circularity. How can we make it better? Then we actually kind of facilitated a campaign also along with for the municipality called the the earlier campaign was NBN and one. The two we had, and it was a series of kind of things to kind of make segregation better, to get to households, and to kind of, and then also payment for the several groups. So we in last June we could make the source segregation 89%, biocompost involved in so many biocompost and aerobic beds installed, and and then surface fee collection also has actually kind of gone up, but still it is a work in progress. So to conclude, um, we last 6 years we have been trying to work through our own projects, and basically it's to kind of bring in policymakers, expert knowledge from academic institutions, citizens, local self governments, and other stakeholders to kind of come to the living lab and learn. Because each of the solution that we provide will actually lead to another three problems. So how do you kind of deal with that? So it's a website also for the living lab LP. All the details are there, and my conclusions is that basically, as my earlier speakers were also telling, to make any change in at least the next 20 years, you need the next generation to be kind of brought in. And the best way is to kind of immerse them into problems and, kind of make them learn. So we could bring in at least 2,000 students from around the country to kind of, give them tools, knowledge, and perspectives. We work with a network of government officials from the state to the local level. We found that crowdsourcing of data can bring in better local analysis, and local participants come into close contact with local governance, and then making of the student citizen who not only assesses but asks questions to the local government. So Can LP is a citizens platform. After that, eight of my students and seven, eight of the local volunteers that were there, they started a startup called Technology and Governance Support Group to kind of take forward what we were doing. And then the Living Lab LLP actually brings them projects and expertise from IIT Bombay and other sites. They recently started a for-profit company, as Dr. Kumarikudi was telling, to kind of sell they've started with the cloths, which is the kind of low hanging fruits from 40 panchayats around. And, so they call their company an urban loop, which also now employs, 30 women from the local neighborhoods. And we made state level manuals for solid waste management and capacity building programs with the Kerala Institute of Local Administration. And last but not the least, we are working on curriculum interventions. Especially, we have started with two, premier planning schools, the CEPT University and NIT Calicut with their planning departments, to kind of make studios actually work, in different towns, so that those learnings can also be done. We have done our solid waste work in Bihar. We are doing that in Begusarai, and also, we are starting a new living lab in Kutch in Gujarat, which is a completely different terrain. But we want to kind of experiment with how this can work. So I think some of these learnings may work for the hill systems also, which actually immersive learning, working with local stakeholders, working with local government, and iteratively learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Narayanan, for that fascinating glimpse into some of the interventions in Alipi and sharing the work of living labs with us. I think they have reflected what you talked about earlier, the need to come up with cost effective, ergonomic, alternative solutions which are participatory, which are collaborative. In fact, the exercise in the Canal and Alipi, I think, is something which can be replicated in some of our streams and rivers here in Shillong as well. Thank you so much for your talk. And we have a bit of time now for questions. We have a full house, sirs. For those of you who can't see the other side, maybe we can turn the camera. Comprising of government officials, experts, resource persons. So, if we could kindly have some questions based on these three very, very stimulating and enlightening presentations, so that our respected speakers can respond to them. The house is open. All right, please hand the mic over to this gentleman.
Thank you very much for the presentations. I like to have one point of update on Can LP platform. The update I like to know whether this initiative is being replicated in other places also, and what are the prerequisites for that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We are doing one similar small town in Begusarai district in Bihar, the solid waste management initiative through a CSR initiative, and then we are now starting a living lab with it with this think tank called Hunashala in Kutch in Bhuj district. The town is called Gandhidham, and we are going to look at housing and solid and liquid waste management. Especially, this is a coastal town which is disaster prone, and Hunashala works a lot on disaster, prone housing. So we will add those other services also. And this is a large project actually, one to deepen living lab in Alapi, and also to kind of, see what can be replicated at the other end for interventions to happen. Does technologies work? What are the kinds of challenges at the level of community? Then what are the challenges at the level of government? For example, our DWATs could not be replicated because of the PWD manual doesn't add that. Although in the National Urban Sanitation Policy from 2008, all these technologies are there. CPHO has listed all these technologies, but in state level manuals, it's not there. In environmental engineering curriculum, it's not there. So the engineers who want to kind of do this, and then there are these stringent standards which we call as the kind of tyranny of standards with 10 BOD and all. Only specific kind of tertiary level technologies can work. So can we have more incremental ways of looking at it, because we can't start with the quality of water and the technology, which actually works with a lot of political economy of interest also, in policy. So I think that is one level of intervention that we want to write. So there is a network of non-sewerage sanitation institutions like Center for Policy Research, Indian Institute of Human Settlement, SET. So we have a kind of network now being developed, and IIT Madras also. So we are trying to develop a network where, and all is not well at the level of alternatives also. So the technologies have to be kind of bettered, the cost effectiveness had to be built in, institutional issues are there. I think only with that we can actually bring it. So to answer to your question, we'll be deepening whatever we are doing over the last 6 years and trying to work in a new terrain, Gujarat also.
Thank you. We have one more question here at the front.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. NC, the question is to you. I'm Raman. You- as the next session is around water quality, community, and governance, one of the parallel sessions. And the waste management issue that you told has a lot of relevance to that particular discussion as well. So, in that context, what is your suggestion about hilly terrains specifically, wherein these kinds of learning labs or living labs, when we are setting up, what kind of specific precautions that the people in the hill terrains should take for ensuring water quality? Yeah, thank you.
Our LFE motto was, whatever we can do at the household level, do it there. So the best way is to kind of ensure that the septic tanks are good there, the containment systems are good there, and then we separate, if possible, black water and grey water. I was talking to my friend Peter Molinga, who is a professor in University of London. He says in Europe it's impossible because of their housing thing that has emerged. That this piping is all, it's both are the same. For fortunately for us, there can be the gray water and the black water can be separated still, mostly. And so I think that will actually substantively reduce the kind of, if it's not kind of combined together, you know, and then we can have FSM systems for black water and gray water can be, much easily managed. If something is coming down, and then we can even use the gray water, even the drains can be used, and then we can have, systems at the level of watersheds, because hilly terrain, that's the advantage also, that, we have watersheds, and mostly these are ponds or wetlands that are there. So Shillong can have maybe 7 or 8, kind of wetlands. But let us not start with these treatment systems. Let us actually concentrate on the household level things. Actually, toilet revolutions are also happening. Now with energy intensity, but other things can also happen. Better inoculums. If you bring in, I think Murli will be in a better position than me technically to tell about this. These are the future things. Then why should we kind of invest in this, kind of huge infrastructure which are energy intensive and capital intensive? So I don't have the answers, but I have some beginnings, some methodology, you know, some discussions which are already there with us. I think, and each context has to kind of, look at this also. The government, the, other stakeholders and the academic institutions. Only 4% of us get into tertiary education. So I think, we have as a responsibility, I think academic institutions have to kind of get into, these aspects. Now there's a law university in Shillong, there's an IIM there, and, there may be engineering colleges. I think, that kind of a change is what one teacher in one institution actually can make a change. And then there is this, ready-made, there is NSS, National Service Scheme. New education policy brings us ready-made, internship, possibilities that are there. So I think why can't we use all this to kind of, and that's the only way to make change. If consultants and NGOs do this, it's never going to change. It has to be part of our curriculum, part of our thinking. as the desertification example we have here.
Are there any more questions? If not, I have a quick question for Mishra sir. So you were talking about the use of drip irrigation in many parts of Meghalaya. In fact, we have seen in Klariat, a number of other districts as well, the use of bamboo-based drip irrigation to draw water from rock crevices and spring chambers directly to low-lying areas is it's very, very efficient. But do you think it is possible to scale up such traditional, methods? And how do we go about modernizing or retrofitting and ensuring that it is scalable while not compromising on efficiency?
Yeah, Isa. These bamboos actually earlier the life used to be very short. That was one drawback. Now there are systems where the bamboo can be treated and it lasts very long. It lasts for decades. So this is one thing we need to introduce, which can make it more sustainable and more in use. Second, those joints can be plastic. So earlier joints used to be bamboo, there used to be leakages and so forth. So joint can be plastic, but the bamboo can still be used. And wherever the gradient is available, like say on the terraces, if you are farming, it's very cheap because you don't need energy to pump up, and then so these plastic based the systems are coming. One, it is plastic. So producing plastic itself, it has its own environmental consequences. So that is one social cost benefit. Social benefit we are deriving by using this bamboo thing. Second thing is that we don't need energy when the gradient is there. So suppose water is flowing from this point and then the terrace is there and it goes down. So no energy is needed. So cost is reduced. I'm very sure and very confident this can be upscaled. Not only upscaled, it can be propagated. But the governance aspect of it. Then there's so much appetite for purchase of plastic and then selling plastic. And those schemes are designed in such a way that if you go for these drip irrigation schemes and you say you're going to use bamboo, they'll simply throw you out. Actually, they say it's not admissible. So, in the governance framework, in the policy framework, until unless we bring this macro level change, and ISA, I would suggest that we should start from Meghalaya. That should be the thing to show up. One more thing quickly while talking about this is I would like to add on that democracy of water, which I was talking about. Increasingly, what has happened that this entire power to manage water and then supply water, then equitable distribution of water, has been concentrated in government agencies. Globally, I would say, more so in some countries, I won't name them. And this is not a very good trend in the sense that now entire responsibility of supplying water has gone on to these government agencies, and systems are crumbling. And there'll be a lot of agitations on this. Why you are not supplying these 150 liters of water to me, etc., etc. So this needs a lot of policy rethinking. So when I said democracy of water, it is water for the people, by themselves, of themselves. Then the justice, which is social, economic, and political. These are all fundamentals of democracy and equity, and most importantly, the institutions, because democracy runs on institutions. So, as Mr. Narayan was mentioning, and Mr. Dr. Murli also made a mention of this, these conflicts which are in the offing, because more and more scarcity will be there, and therefore, until unless we have these institutions where people can reconcile some jury or some committee, or some council, something at the local level, and some to raise the level to some appellate level, which is again democratic, and some ombudsman and so forth, some sort of self-regulation, because everything cannot be done by government agencies. So this point also is important. Once you start devolving resources to these democratic institutions, bamboo as a drip irrigation input will come, because until unless this is decentralized, I think bamboo will have little possibility. So very much actually it can be upscaled, it can be updated and put to use even now, and so many benefits actually. Isa, thank you for asking this.
Thank you so much, sir. I think we have no more time, although we would have loved to, continue this discussion. But on that note, I think we have come to the end of this wonderful panel, which was stimulating, educative, and experience based. A number of very, very useful reflections, which I think are beneficial to the entire house. Thank you for the stress on the judicious use and management of water resources, of ensuring partnerships, collaborations, and breaking down of the silos which seem to plague all of us, building institutions and immersive learning. I think the different panelists have touched on all these things. We thank you for your contributions to this Water Conclave. We thank you, Sir R.M. Mishra, Dr. Murali Tumurukudi, as well as Professor N.C. Narayanan, for taking your valuable time to share your thoughts and insights with us. We apologize for the bit of delay at the start. Thank you so much. I thank my seniors and colleagues, Dr. Jorambeda Sir and Sir Sibi Sadhu, Dr. Shakil Ahmed, our respected Additional Chief Secretary, who has spearheaded, led, and envisioned this entire conclave. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and all the very best. Thank you, sirs.
Thank you, Madam, for facilitating such an engaging conversation. And thank you to the distinguished panelists adding to the wide range of valuable perspectives, which has further stoked the curiosity of all the participants here. Keeping that curiosity lit, to welcome more such ideas and experiences, let us move on to the next session, which will be on water quality, communities, and governance. Brief introduction on the moderator of the session for the information of all. Shri V.R. Raman. Right. Yes. I would also like to inform that there is a parallel session going on in the Magnum Hall too. Here we are going to continue with the session on water quality, communities, and governance. And the moderator for this session is Mr. V.R. Raman. Shri V.R. Raman is a seasoned public policy, systems governance, and accountability expert with a multidisciplinary, multi domain experience and expertise. He holds a work